Hey, I'm Sage Plays. Welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo. It's a new series, we've got a new billboard in the entrance and some new arrivals as well. And today we're going to be building the coolest penguin habitat I've ever seen in between the desert house and the flying forest. If you saw my Singapore zoo tour, you will have seen this habitat IRL at Bird Paradise in Singapore. And today we're going to build it in Planet Zoo. Welcome back, pals. It's been a couple of weeks since the last episode, and that is for a very good reason. I knew this build was going to be really tricky. So if you've not seen Penguin Cove at Bird Paradise, it features two freestanding 7 meters deep water tanks for the penguins to swim in, a suspended 2 meter deep swimming tank for them to swim on the surface and just underwater, a variety of icebergs for them to stand on, 2 levels of viewing for the guests. It's fair to say it's pretty complex. We're going to get as close as possible to the real habitat in this build, with just one minor change really. The freestanding tanks, the first of which we're building here, are going to be joined onto the main water tank on both levels of the build rather than just at the top like it is in real life, because I want to make sure that the Planet Zoo penguins have room to get into these and swim around, because that is one of the coolest parts of it, when they swim around in these tanks, and as a guest you can actually look up at them and see them swimming from underneath as well as seeing them swim past you, which is very unusual in a penguin habitat. So as this habitat is on 2 levels, we're going to need 2 sets of paths in here. So I'm just using our angry vendor to get the right height for them. I want the guests to be able to see both under and over the water on the second level here. There's a little device in the real habitat, an iceberg with a hole in it, so the penguins do the thing where they pop straight up out of the water and onto the iceberg. It is so amazing to watch. I spent a very long time watching that. We're going to replicate that as closely as we can in Planet Zoo using the platform float. Unfortunately, we can't get it right next to the glass like it is in the real habitat, just due to the way that Planet Zoo works. So what I'm going to do now is join up these 2 tanks. So I'm just marking the position with a pole there, so that I can move this tank into exactly the right place for the curved piece of glass to match up and be symmetrical. So we'll pop that in there. There we go. And this is going to be the main part of the underwater habitat for the penguins. And then we're going to stretch this out at the back with a nice curve on it, so that we've got lots of room for them to swim in. The size of this building is going to be pretty much the same as the real building. I've measured it out on Google Maps. Now we're going to get some terrain in so that we can put a habitat gate in and turn this into working habitat. Ignore the big bits of glass at the back there, they're just placeholders so that I know what I'm doing. That'll be deleted and none of that will be visible in the final build. We just need to get some terrain in here for the beach for the penguins to have the majority of their space. We're also going to have some icebergs in the water so that they can stand on those as well. With the exception of the glass tanks at the front, literally none of this will be visible, but we need to get this stuff in so that the physics and the mechanics of the habitat work and that we can place the water in at the right level. So we'll put a habitat gate in back here. This is where the keepers will get in. And then I've put some more of the paths around the top, and now we're going to put the paths on the ground floor in as well, just following them around the habitat. Again, don't worry what the paths look like, this will all be covered up with custom pathing later on. We just need to make sure that it works. You can see we've got a way to get from the bottom to the top there, and we're going to be doing that using lifts. In the real habitat they have both lifts and a slope as well, but building slopes that look good in a space this small is pretty much impossible in Planet Zoo, so we'll be using exclusively lifts. These are the same lifts made by Shift Z that we used in the entrance. Such an amazing blueprint, so no point in building those again. Just placing in some wider paths here to fill in the gaps in the thinner paths so the guests have got lots of room to walk around in. And then we'll move on to actually building parts of the habitat itself. So we've got a really smooth ceiling in this habitat, which works on a couple of different levels. I'm going to be doing something I very rarely do, which is using art pieces to build it, because they've got that kind of plasticky look, which normally I don't want on anything external. But this is pretty much what the ceiling in the real Penguin Cove looks like. So we're going to be using these pieces, rotating them around the tanks, and then just manually placing them alongside the glass all the way around this habitat. This is one of the reasons this build took so long. There are no squares or circles anywhere in this habitat, so pretty much every piece in the entire build has to be placed manually, which is a lengthy process. Sometimes these things need to be done though, so we're going to keep copying this across manually until we get this first part of the ceiling done and looking nice and smooth, and then we'll copy this down to the floor. This will join the paths onto the tanks. And then we're going to use the copper statue base to build a floor with. Much as I love this crazy water floor, we're going to be replacing it with something more like what they have in the real building. just using this one piece, copied numerous times to fill in the whole floor. It extends into the habitat a little bit because it's square, but that'll all be covered up with rocks later on. And then we're going to rotate some of the floor, so we're going to have a noticeable repeating pattern over the entire floor. We're going to recolor this part of the floor here so that it matches up with what we've just put in. It looks nice and seamless. And then just to make certain it is seamless, we're going to copy a few more bits around so that it goes right up to this glass here, and there's no visible gap between the glass and the floor pieces. And then we're going to start working on the rest of the ceiling just by copying what we've done already on one level higher than what we have at the moment. And then on the next level above that, we'll put some normal ceiling pieces in just on the grid. Obviously a load of these will have to come off the grid so that they don't poke into the habitat. We'll do that later. We've got a really nice ceiling in now, 3 different layers, 2 different colors. Very happy with how this is coming together already. We're going to build a structural support here to join the 2 levels together, just a simple tower, and then we'll move on to the top floor. So it's going to look a little different up here. We're going to be using the lava rocks to join the paths onto the glass and make sure we get rid of these curbs. This is how it is in the real habitat, a lot more rock work upstairs and then a much more clean look downstairs. So again, we'll just copy this one lava rock piece all the way around the join until we get things looking nice and smooth. And then there's a nice big rock for people to sit on. So we're going to hide one of the benches under some of the tiger rocks here and just get this to the right height so that the guests can actually sit on this. And then when they do that, the legs won't be disappearing into the rocks or anything like that. It will look just like a natural bench that we don't have in the game. I'm a big fan of hiding benches under things. We've got these steps in the water terraces where the guests can actually sit on the steps, and now we've got something else that they can sit on that isn't just a normal Planet Zoo bench, which is always kind of fun. And then we're going to use one of the really cool penguin statues. This is one of my favorite statues in the game. There's a lot of penguin statues in the real habitat, so we're going to replicate that here with this. Looking good. Let's move on to the ceiling in the habitat itself. So we're going to be using these big arch-shaped panels for this, again, just to get the smooth look that we have in the real habitat. They need to be curved upwards, as you can see here, and then as the glass curves around, it needs to be curved on the other axis as well, so that it meets up. For some reason, I had to do all of this on the world axis to stop the panels just getting higher and higher. I don't know enough about maths or engineering to know why I had to do that, but eventually I worked it out, and it does come together nicely. Took a lot of moving around, but the end result is the ceiling that curves on 2 axes at the same time and looks really good. Now, while I finish off the ceiling, let's talk about what's going to happen in this season of San Bernardino Zoo. So there's 2 major things that I want to achieve in this season. The first is called the Frozen North, and is going to be a big area devoted entirely to animals that live in the icy wastes of Northern America and the Arctic. Really looking forward to getting started on that. And the other thing that I want to achieve is essentially to finish the zoo. So all the gaps between the various different parts of the habitats that we have at the moment are going to be filled in with various smaller builds that I've had planned for a long time, most of which I've left until this series so that we know exactly where they're going to go and exactly how big they need to be. So I won't reveal all the plans, but those are the basics of this season. Let's get back to the build, where we are just finishing off the inside of the habitat with some more art shapes. I've never used this many art shapes in my life. I really want that smooth, plasticky look all the way around. And then we're going to move on to the penguins beach. So loads of rock work in here. At the moment, we've got this really nice view over the rest of the zoo. Or, well, it'd be a nice view if the rest of the zoo is finished, but there's going to be no glass at all on the externals of this habitat because we can't have any natural light in here, because we need to maintain this at a temperature of 0 or maybe 1 degree, and trying to keep a building made out of glass at 1 degree in Southern California will not work any better than it does in Singapore. So like the real habitat, the entire building will be enclosed. There'll be no windows, no glass ceiling or anything like that. We're going to rely entirely on actual lights to light it up in here, which is going to be fun. We'll get onto that in a second. But for the moment, we need to fill in the walls all the way around the habitat. We're going to fill it in with a mixture of these rocks and some big billboards. The reason for that will become apparent later. In the real habitat, what they have is the whole walls and ceilings are almost like video screens with a huge lighting array attached to it so that they can keep the lighting exactly as it would be in the penguins' real habitat. All the penguins in here are Antarctic or subantarctic penguins, king penguins, gentoos, northern rockhoppers and Humboldt penguins, and the ceiling and walls combined with the lights enable the zoo to replicate their natural lighting. They have a full year-long light cycle which enables them to match the exact seasons of the Antarctic throughout the year so that the penguins are always under the same amount of sunlight or lack of sunlight that they would be in the wild. And they even have the ability to project the Aurora Australis or southern lights onto the walls, which looks absolutely amazing. And I want to get as close to that as possible in this build. So we're going to be using billboards and lots of lights to get a similar effect to that in here. We're going to do that using a mixture of spotlights for the Aurora Australis effect and stadium lights just to make sure it's nice and bright in here and you can see the penguins, and these will all be hidden up in the ceiling. So we just move these around. These are the stadium lights, just to provide some daylight style lighting so that we can make sure that everything's visible. And then I'm going to extend the end of this beach using these rocks, and we'll put some snow rocks in later as well. So the end of it looks a lot more natural than if we just have bare terrain ending at the water. This will give us a much more realistic look. So we'll just copy this one rock with random rotation on until we get to the end. And then we'll start working on the icebergs and rocks that are floating in the water. You can see the platform float in the middle there. That needs a huge area of space around it, unfortunately, to get it to work. So rather than being right next to the glass, it's kind of stuck out there. And we've got to be really careful about where we place the rocks to make sure that it actually works. You'll see a lot of that in the end cinematics. It does still look really cool when the penguins jump up through it. And now we're going to put in one of my favorite parts of the habitat. There's two giant sort of knives of rock that sit at the end of the parts of the tank that extend out towards the guests. One of them is made of rock, and one of them is made of ice. We're going to build one using just one rock really for the majority of it, and then some flatter rocks to put the surface in up here so we make sure the penguins can stand on it as well as swim around it. And once we've got it perfect, we're going to copy it across to the other side of the habitat and then use a trick that I showed, I think it was in the proboscis monkey episode, where we can replace all of these tiger rocks with the exact same ice rocks. So I'll show you that really quickly here. We just click on each rock, copy it, and then switch it out for the same rock but the ice version, and then place it down, and then later on we can go in and delete all the tiger rocks. It's just a much quicker way of making two of the same thing. Now that's the interior of the habitat pretty much done. We need to work on the exterior now because at the moment it doesn't have any walls or a roof. But before we do that, it's time for Franchise Masters. This is one of the most useful building tips that I've ever learned, and it's to do with selecting pieces, which is something that can be very tricky in Planet Zoo. So you can see here I'm building some new custom signage for the zoo, and what I'm using is the font pieces sunk into the normal signs so that I can make a much more sleek and modern looking sign. The problem is, because the art pieces are sunk into the sign, there's no way to select them without selecting all of them and then clicking around for ages trying to get it to select the sign so that you can then deselect the sign and end up with just the font pieces selected. Now, if you're just trying to edit one font piece, that is a major pain and takes forever to do. So what you can do is, because you can click on the sign but not the font pieces, what you do is click on the sign and delete it, then select the font piece or pieces that you want, and then hit Ctrl-Z, and the sign will reappear, but you'll still have the font pieces selected, which means you can now do whatever you wanted to do with them. It is so useful. I cannot believe I lived without this tip for so long. Really hope you find it useful. Let's get back to the build. Onto the outside of the building. The structure of this building is actually really simple. It's just going to be mainly grid pieces with a couple of different grids going on. But what makes it interesting is the front and some of the sides of the building are then completely covered in rockwork, and it's a really, really beautiful building when it's finished. So we're going to put the basics in here using the metal cladding pieces, and we'll get a bit of an overhang at the top just to make it look a little bit more interesting, but the vast majority of this is going to be covered up with rocks, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like. And then we're going to use these groups to then build inner walls using just some plaster pieces. This will all be covered up with some more billboards later on. So nice and simple. And speaking about the billboards, let's head inside and take care of those. This is a beautiful image of the Antarctic skyline. I wish I could say I took this myself, but sadly I've never been to Antarctica. This is a royalty-free image that I've got. I love the sky in this one, it's so dynamic. And we're gonna flip this. So we got two of them, so we can then join them together, and it looks nice and seamless. If you want to learn how to do this, I did a tutorial on it a while ago. And then just copy it all around the habitat and use rocks to cover up the joins. And wow, how cool does that look, especially with all the lighting on it. The last thing that we're going to do in the inside is add some snow in, so loads of the snow rocks always sunk so that there's a little bit of the tiger rock showing through it, so we get a really realistic covering of snow. And then it's on to the final stage of the build, the frontage. I said it before when we were doing the gift shop, and I'll say it again now, I love these new glass doors. They are so good, such a help to making realistic builds. So we're going to have 2 sets of doors forming the entrance to this habitat, and then we'll use some of the metal cladding panels so that we can get these set in really seamlessly to the wall, like so. And then we'll start on the rock work. So I'm copying this exactly from the real build, so I'm going to get the colour as close as possible to the real rocks with this rock here, and then we're going to start layering in some others. It's a really cool bit of rock work, loads of big rocks and then loads of smaller rocks to get more of the layered effect, and then it arches over the doorway like so. Using some of these big rocks here, and then we'll just keep copying until we got something that we're happy with. I really like the way the rocks frame the doors. It's a really impressive entrance. And then in front of the entrance is a really cute little display with penguin statues and the name of the habitat. I really like the name Penguin Cove, because it's a direct recreation of it. It's perfectly appropriate, so I'm not going to change it. We'll just put some rocks nearer the ground so that our penguin statues have something to stand on. There's 2 of these statues, one of them's mirrored, which means we can get 2 slightly different looking penguins in, which is good. So we'll pop another one at the back here, and then we'll copy across another rock that's a little bit higher so that he's got something to stand on. And then we'll raise some rocks up here to put the text on, and then use one of Wyatt Andrews Workshop's brilliant fonts to create the name. The real habitat has a sponsor. I think it's like a Singaporean insurance company or something. So I'm going to put a sponsor in here, PS Vision Gaming, one of my favorite creators. He put a little tribute to our channel in his amazing city build, so I thought I'd return the favor here. I forgot something, one more thing, a little coffee shop in the inside of the habitat near the penguins. I made this whole thing from 3 pieces, but I really like how it looks. Just a piece of aluminium, the Twilight wood piece, and the Star Fox coffee logo. Some stools and a bar created by Toves from his coffee shop workshop pack. And now it's time to add in the penguins. Here's the entrance. I changed the colour of some of the text and added some snow in, and I'm really pleased with how this looks, with a few plants up in the top as well. This is really, really close to the real habitat. Having actually been there, very happy with it. Let's go inside. Past our first penguin statue, and this is the effect I wanted with the guests right up to the glass, an amazing view of the penguins underwater and out of the water. Yes, that is what I wanted to see, the penguins jumping out of the water. It's a shame that we can't disguise this in an iceberg like it is done at Bird Paradise, but those are limitations that we work with in Planet Zoo. I'm really happy with how this looks, and I love watching the penguins swimming underwater. I'm hoping we get another cold water penguin at some point. That would be really cool, so we could get maybe a Gentoo or a Humboldt or something in here. There's the little coffee shop. We got one final shot of the penguins swimming underwater. I really hope you guys enjoyed this habitat. I'm really happy with it. Just time to take a quick look at the Explorers Club monolith. Thank you so much to all of you who've joined. Hit the join button on the channel if you want to see your name up here. And don't forget to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this. And I'll see you next week for some more San Bernardino Zoo. Bye.